Good morning, fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the morning market prep video for March 24th, 2025. Well, hope everyone had a great weekend. It was a really windy weekend here, but it did get a little bit of relaxation done, so that was nice. Hope everyone is ready for another wild week in the market. One of the reasons it may be wild is we've got some big economic data points coming our way later in the week, and we're only 1 week away from the beginning of the reciprocal tariffs. Now, the understanding is that they have now become flexible reciprocal tariffs, which may be a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not really sure on that. When it adds uncertainty to the market, I'm going to say that's a bad thing, but we'll have to wait and see how the market responds. A good rally coming in on Friday maybe gives some hope that we're going to get a nice relief now after pulling back and resting just a bit, kind of retesting some of those low points in some stocks, and now showing lots of bullishness this morning. So let's take a look at what happened overnight. First off, if we look at Asian markets were mostly bullish overnight. We had the Nikkei just slightly lower by 0.18%, and South Korea was slightly lower, but Australia was up just modestly, only $5.70. We had India up 1.32%. Hong Kong was up 215 points, or 0.91%, and Shanghai was higher by $5.20. If we take a look at European markets this morning, well, we've got some green across the board here, but modest green. DAX up 0.39%. The FTSE is up 0.13%, and the CAC is up 0.06%. But boy, we are showing lots of bullishness in the pre-market futures here on our indexes. Right now, this morning, the Dow futures are powerful, up 360 points at the moment, looking for a big gap up. The S&P 500 futures are up 62.75 this morning, and NASDAQ futures up a whopping 262 points this morning. So lots of bullishness there in the pre-market. Now, one thing that is a little bit interesting is we also have the dollar moving down here this morning because our bonds are moving slightly higher. We've got the 2-year bonds pushing up to 3.98%. 10-year bonds at 4.28%, and those 30-year bonds coming in at 4.62%, maybe raising a little bit of concern there on those rates. So watch that carefully. If we continue to see those bonds go up, we'll want to keep a close eye on that. Now, with the dollar showing a little bit of weakness here this morning, that's kind of interesting as a result, but we'll have to keep a close eye on that. Right now, the U.S. dollar futures are down 22 cents. If we take a look at what's going on in oil this morning, boy, those oil producers have had a nice little run up. First off, we made that higher low here, and you guys know that's what I'm always looking for, that higher low. Break the downtrend here, though, and now any rest or pullback in here that holds onto this upside trend, I'd be keeping an eye on that. There's a lot of stocks out there looking pretty good. Right now we have oil futures up 50 cents a barrel at 68.77 a barrel, and we've got Brent crude also higher at 72.49 a barrel. Now, on the other hand, we've got natural gas, UNG, starting to show a little bit of weakness here. A little higher low in here, trying to push back here. If we see the dollar starting to rise, that could signal a little bit. I'm not the dollar starting to rise. If energy, oil and gas starts to rise, that could signal maybe a little bit of resting pattern here in natural gas. You'll want to keep an eye on this. We've got this little bit of a head and shoulders pattern now starting to set up here. So your neckline on that would be across in here. Watch that carefully if we were to drift lower, maybe back down into here to find a little bit of price support. Keep a close eye on UNG. Let's take a look at what's going on in the precious metals market. Precious metals moving a little bit higher here this morning. Right now we have gold setting up in a bullish pattern, and we have gold futures up $12.70 an ounce here at the moment. Silver futures are also pushing back up here, although they did give up this trend and a little bit of price support. We'll have to keep a close eye on that. You'll have to push back up and reclaim that to be too much of anything I'd be interested in at the moment. And if we take a look at copper, copper's a little bit higher this morning. Nice little higher low starting to set up in here. You guys can see the developing upside trend, breaking through some resistance here and holding up in this area would be pretty significant. You might want to keep an eye on copper or any of those copper miners. And then taking a look, platinum is a little bit lower this morning, but palladium is trying to move up. And although this has been really choppy around in here trying to deal with this resistance, we do have this little tiny uptrend underway. We'll see if it can push through this big area of resistance in the chart or not. Last but not least, let's take a look at what's going on in crypto here this morning. Bitcoin up sharply here this morning, up $2,701 a coin at the moment. Really pushing strong here today on that weakening dollar. And we have Ether up substantially as well, 4.80% on Ether, pushing sharply higher at 96, almost $97 a coin, trying to break out from underneath that downtrend. So keep an eye on Ether, and mostly green in those cryptos this morning. So what does all that mean for the day? Well, how about we settle in? Let's buckle up. Let's get ready for the Monday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at these index charts and see if we can figure out how we might want to approach the market for today. Remember, we want to look at the charts for what they are, not for what we want them to be. And remember, we've got to shake off that bias here and just focus in on the possibilities. Well, I got to tell you, I think the possibilities may have changed here in the market, particularly here in the diamonds. We pushed down pretty strongly. We held some price support in here and surged, reversed back up strongly on Friday. And now we're gapping higher here this morning. Now, I hate it when we make these big giant gaps because it just makes a mess of the chart, and then we oftentimes end up pulling back to refill those gaps. So be careful with that. We could still potentially whipsaw some big price moves here in the market. But that said, nice bullish higher low here in the diamonds, pushing back up. And if we take a look at our moving averages here this morning, you can see we're gapping back above the 200-day. Now, once again, I wouldn't rule out the possibility after a big gap up like that we might rest it back toward that 200-day at all, but keep a close eye on that. A good little relief is certainly in the cards and something we need. And we'll want to be watching this area up here. If those bulls can break through this resistance here this morning, then maybe see if we can push up toward that little downtrend I've got going on in the chart. If the bears, however, have anything to say today, and if we were to whipsaw, then you'll want to keep an eye on this. It could be a pretty big point pullback if we were to pull back and fill that gap here this morning. So watch that carefully. And remember, we could still continue to pull on back and come back into this trend as well. So watch that for that possibility. If we take a look at our SPY, well, our SPY getting a big gap up here this morning as well, and also that little higher low coming in after that big Friday reversal. And you can see this morning we're trying to break through this resistance and gap above that resistance. We struggled above that area all week last week. We would push up there, we couldn't get through, and then end up pulling back by the end of the day. So watch that carefully right in this area if we can continue to see those bulls push on through. Let's look up in here. There's a little bit of congestion area right through there that we might want to be watching for as the next resistance level to the upside. And then of course this downtrend line in here, we could come into contact almost at the exact location right there on that upside move. Now, if the bears were to get any inspiration here on the day, then pushing back down, and once again, that whipsaw possibility, pushing back down, that we could pull back, fill that gap, and even come back into this trend, which really doesn't hurt the chart, but would obviously be painful if anyone chased in this morning. So watch that carefully if that possibility does exist. Now, keeping in mind, we've got that 200-day moving average up there that we need to see if we can catch a test. And if we put that congestion area that I pointed out right there in the chart, that's right up into that area of the 200-day. And it's not uncommon for that 200-day to provide a little bit of a resistance. We could hesitate there, rest, or even consolidate at that place. So watch carefully. Our QQQ also getting a nice boost here today. All week last week we tried to break through this area up here and just couldn't get her done. Today we're doing it in one fell swoop with a gap up. Now, that being said, while that's happening, we're creating this little higher low. It's a pretty flat little upside trend here at the moment on the QQQ, but it is worth paying attention to and watching that closely, particularly if we can hold above this area by the end of the day. Now, if those bulls can continue to find inspiration here today, then we're going to start looking up through here, and I'm going to suggest maybe an area right in here might serve as a little bit of price resistance in the chart. Watch that carefully, and if we can break through there, then of course right up here to this next level, a pretty substantial price resistance that we're going to have to deal with in the QQQ. Now, keeping in mind when we're looking at that, well, that 200-day moving average is right up in that area, so we'll want to be watching that carefully as we approach that 200-day. You just want to keep in mind too, as we're rallying back, notice all of these moving averages are in decline up here, the shorter term, so watch that carefully. They're going to create a pretty good zone of resistance up in that space up there, so watch carefully. Now, if the bears have anything to say, well, the same thing is true here today. Maybe a pushback. We might test that support right in here and bounce right off of that support, but then we could also pull back and fill that gap here and even come back into this trend. So watch that carefully if we do happen to whipsaw today. Certainly wouldn't want to rule out that possibility as volatile as the market has been. And IWM also getting a good push to the upside here this morning. I'm still holding a bull put credit spread in here, so believe me, I'm happy about that here this morning. We're going to have to see if we can complete this pop through of this resistance area that we've created right in here. See if we can get up through there, and then if we can, we're up here testing this red line. And if you've been watching my videos, you know that resistance area goes all the way back to 2021 and 2022. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think that'd be a significant one for the IWM to break, keeping in mind that we're just breaking back off of this 50-day or 500-day moving average and pushing up. And if we start pushing up into that area, we start coming up into these zones up in here. Notice that that 50 is crossed down through the 200, what we call the death cross. There's going to be a lot of work maybe pushing up through that area, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that. Now, if the bears were to have anything to say, well, we don't have as big a gap here, so a little bit of a pushback, maybe hold that area of support in the chart, maybe even come back to this trend, and that still could hold for that upside opportunity. Got to tell you that I am feeling a bit more optimistic that we're going to hold to the upside and show some bullishness, but we still have to be watchful and careful for these whipsaws. Now, if we take a look at some of our internals, our VIX here this morning is likely to show a significant decline. We started up last couple of trading days, we started up in that VIX, but that big reversal on Friday bringing us back down. We're now below 20 handles in the VIX, and the big gap up this morning, I would suggest, is probably going to push us down. We might even test some new lows here, or some new areas of support, not new lows, but some new areas of support in the chart as those bulls continue to push. So watch that carefully. But once again, just be watchful and careful. These big gap ups can whipsaw a lot. So make sure you're planning your trades very, very carefully. Now, if the bears have anything to say, well, this is a pretty good area to bounce off of. So if we were to whipsaw today and reverse, then this would be a pretty good area to be bouncing off of. So watch that carefully. Our T2122 does give us some hope of this relief rally because we had this big reversal on Friday. Friday, at one point in time, our T2122 was down in here, and that gives us that hope that we're going to get that relief rally to the upside and that burst. And boy, that nice change here today. Now, I'm going to suggest this gap up this morning. This gap up could push us all the way up here into the bearish reversal zone in half a heartbeat. So we're kind of whipsawing to the upside in a really big way, and it's what this market seems to do anymore. It's either all or nothing. It's just all speculation racing in, and just tons of enthusiasm into that move. But at the same time, remember, nothing has really changed. We're approaching that 1st of April where we're going to see those reciprocal tariffs. What they actually mean, I don't know. But there is still a lot of uncertainty out there in the market. And remember, well, we don't have a whole lot of economic data to help us out, and we'll be coming into that blackout period here for the market because, well, we're going to be heading into that next round of earnings here before too long. So we could see those market breadths decline. So keep a close eye on that, and just realize that if the bears have anything to say, well, we still have more downside opportunity because of that bounce back up in this big gap that we're seeing this morning. Let's take a look at our T2108. Now, our T2108 didn't really show us a good response there on Friday. Percentage of stocks above their 40-day moving average didn't improve. It actually declined. We're back below 25%. You can see we gave up a little bit of price support. This is going to change pretty significantly first thing this morning, I think. So watch that carefully. Bouncing back up in here, we'll start looking up here toward these next resistance levels in the chart as we start progressing back up if those bulls can continue to hold. A full-on whipsaw, however, could bring this sharply lower. So again, be prepared for that. And T2107 also didn't show us any improvement there on that reversal on Friday. So the percentage of stocks above the 200 actually declined. But we're holding up here above 30%. And I think this big gap up this morning, we're likely to see some of these areas of resistance tested up here, and maybe a substantial improvement as long as we don't whipsaw. And then if we take a look at our T2101, well, I got to tell you, when we were pulling back on Friday, we were not seeing breadth in that pullback, which gave me the belief that we were closer to a little bit more of a relief response. Well, we're doing it all at once here this morning in a big gap up, so watch that carefully. What's going to be important is we are going to need to see some bullish breadth. We have been pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to get something going to the upside, but every time we've pushed to the upside, we've not seen breadth follow the bullish move. So keep that in mind. If we were to get this big gap up and not see breadth following this market, well, there's your opportunity for a pretty substantial whipsaw. Even a pullback to close the gap could be possible, so watch carefully for that possibility. Let's take a look at our economic calendar here for today. And our economic calendar, well, it's not a very busy one here for today. Not much going on. We've got a Chicago Fed National Activity Report coming in at 8:30, and a PMI composite flash that will be out at 9:45. Right now, they're not giving us a consensus in there what that might be. They're suggesting that manufacturing index improved just slightly over the last read, 51.6 to 51.8, and that the services index improved to 51.2. So keep an eye on that this morning. And then we've got a 3 and 6 month bond auction. You want to be keeping in mind, since we got past the FOMC, we're probably going to get a slew of Fed speakers, and they're just going to keep running out there and talking and yakking it up big time. So you can see as we move through the week, we're starting to pick up some of those Fed speakers out there. We've got Case-Shiller on Tuesday. We've got a consumer confidence number, obviously a market moving number. New home sales, Richmond Fed manufacturing. As we go into Wednesday, mortgage applications, we're going to get those durable good orders and petroleum status numbers. And then the big numbers of the week, we've got GDP coming in here on Thursday, international trade, jobless claims, and then the Fed's favorite number, that core PCE number. And of course, we know these tariffs have got everyone worried about the potential of increasing inflation. So that just gives you that another thing to be thinking about on this big surge to the upside. These data points could bring us back down if we happen to see that inflation moving to the upside. So watch that carefully. Let's take a look at our earnings calendar here for today, and I got to tell you, there's not much. Really not much. I went through, there are more reports than this, but the thing is they really aren't notable. Really small caps, not much to be concerned about here today on those earnings. Nothing here for this morning in morning reports that's of any major concern at all. And then after the bell, we just have one in KBH here this afternoon. So keep an eye on that, which, that isn't a surprise on a Monday as we kind of wind down this quarter, but we will pick up some more notable earnings as we go throughout the week. So keep an eye on KBH this afternoon. Let's take a look at a few stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, if you could do me that quick favor, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, if you could please click that subscribe button on YouTube and also click that bell icon when it pops up so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who does take the time to do that. I truly appreciate it. For those of you that share, just click that link and copy the link and share it on your social media feed. That helps a lot in reaching new people. Thank you to everyone who does that. And of course, just a big shout out and thank you for everyone who continues to support the channel through the Buy Me a Coffee link that's just below the title of the video. You guys are truly awesome. Let's take a look at a few of these charts that could be setting up. And remember, everyone, these are not recommendations to buy or sell any security. You need to do your own due diligence. Be very, very careful. And remember, we have those potentials of some big point moves and even whipsaws here in the market. So watch carefully and be prepared for the volatility that could easily come with all the uncertainty that we have ahead of us. First off, let's take a look. I had mentioned copper. Copper making a nice little bullish pattern here on COPX on one of the copper miners. Keep an eye on that. Watch that closely. You might also want to keep an eye on like Newmont here for gold. That is a beautiful little pattern in here on gold. Looking very, very good. You might go to FCX for a little bit of a copper miner in here. That's looking very, very bullish. Of course, a lot of the miners are looking good right now, and if we continue to see the dollar weaken, I would watch some of these miners continue to push on up. This is a really good potential setup here on Barrick Gold, holding support, holding trend. Bullishness pushes on through. Perfect entry point potential on Barrick Gold, but make sure you're watching those metrics out there, because anything here is possible. If we take a look, PAAS also setting up a potential higher low, holding its support here. I would keep an eye on these miners, even things like GDX if you want a group of miners in an ETF. That looks pretty good. GDXJ looking pretty good on that side as well. So watch carefully for those. Let's keep a close eye here on some of these other things that are really had some turning around happening here last week. Take a look at Uber. Now Uber had a big nice little stretch here to the upside. Now this is not what I would say ready for prime time yet. The reason I say that is this is what I call a crossback up. What we need to have proof of is we need to have proof that we can hold the higher low. So watch how it deals with this resistance up here. Any rest or pullback in here might set up that opportunity for the upside in Uber. Take a look at Dollar General. Dollar General has been making some moves here to the upside, and I've been talking about this for a little while, pushing on through, trying to break through some resistance. Now I wouldn't want to chase it here, but a little rest or pullback. Notice how we've been in this major bottoming pattern in here. So let that come back and find a trend in here. Find that trend along here someplace, and then look for your next opportunity, maybe into Dollar General. Now this might get a good bullish move here or a bearish move, because we've got Dollar Tree that will be reporting here soon. So watch that carefully here on Dollar Tree. I think that earnings report is coming up here soon. So watch that closely. Let's take a look at a couple other RBLX. Now RBLX trying to break this downtrend here, and here again, this isn't quite ready for prime time for me because it's just that cross up, but I would watch that carefully. Breaking through this downtrend over here is an important move, so break through that downtrend, prove to hold it, hold this area support in here, and look for that next opportunity to the upside. That's looking pretty good. I also like the way I'm seeing TWLO. TWLO is making a move back up. This broke all of these levels of support in here. We could have a situation here where we fail at that resistance pretty easily, but if we can break through and hold up here and hold that higher low in there, Twillo might start coming back around to the upside. So could go either direction, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Take a look at Amgen in here. Amgen continues to set up in a nice little consolidating pattern. We've been stuck in this range here for a while, and we could remain stuck for a bit of time, but I would watch that carefully to see if this bullishness today could move us on out to the upside. Worth paying pretty close attention to. Take a look at some of these oil sector stocks. Oil producers, they've been pushing up nicely, possibly ready to put in some higher lows. Take a look at ExxonMobil breaking through a big area of resistance in the chart, breaking through this downtrend. Any kind of rest or pullback, I think, sets up an opportunity there worth paying attention to. Warren Buffett's favorite in here, Occidental, putting in a nice little W bottom or double bottom pattern in here, breaking through the center of that formation and holding in here. I would watch this to see if that could move on through to the upside. And speaking of Warren Buffett, let's take a close look at his Berkshire B. My goodness, Berkshire B has been looking really good, moving up in this upside trend, continuing to show lots of bullishness, breaking through this next area of resistance. Now we're resting and consolidating here. Watch for that next opportunity, possibly in here on Berkshire B, to move to the upside. I think in the healthcare sector, there's been, on Friday, there was some reversals back up in some of the healthcare sector. I saw things like Pfizer trying to push a little bit higher here. Now this is still in its downtrend, But if we are going to get a recovery, watch for some of these to maybe move on up. Merck has been holding in a very, very bullish pattern, breaking through the downtrend, just holding in here, resting. Might have an opportunity there in Merck to start turning around and coming back up. Take a look at Comcast. Comcast trying to come up out of this bottom as well. This breakthrough up here, nice, but you can see we've broke through before and then failed. So that's why we need to prove that we can hold up here and then look for that next opportunity to the upside. LAZR had a good earnings report, breaking through this resistance. We've been in quite a pattern here, moving to the downside, breaking through that area, popping through here. I think any rest or pullback now sets up an opportunity on LAZR. And I would keep an eye on some of the old boring defensive companies like Altria here. Now, I'm not going to be in Altria. Now, I was actually called away on my trade here. Actually, that hasn't completed. It will complete this morning. Haven't been called away on Altria just yet. I've actually been called. I just haven't resolved it. As soon as the market opens, it will resolve. But you can see we've got this nice little breakthrough up here in a resting pattern. If the bulls can continue to follow through on this, watch that carefully. If we get that bullishness coming into the market there on some of those defensive sector stocks. But I will tell you, I would be a little bit cautious on defensive sector if we are going to turn around and be really bullish in the market here all of a sudden. Then I would likely see, I think there's a good possibility anyway, that we could see some of these defensive sector stocks starting to pull back. That rush to pick them up for safety may ebb really quickly if all of a sudden it's a risk-on market. So with that, everyone, there's quite a few stocks for you to pay attention to. Hey, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. I want to wish you great results in your trading. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it. As always, be careful, be safe, and I want to wish you all the very best, and I'll see you right back here bright and early Tuesday morning. Have a great one, everyone.